The Amazing Digital Circus released episode 4 on Friday the 13th, and what better time than right before the holiday season, already ripe with existential dread for workers everywhere. This episode stands out because it shifts from the fears explored in episode 3, such as Kinger's trauma about losing loved ones, to a more subtle kind of horror, the daily grind of masking at work. Gangle gets a chance to step out of side character syndrome and show this very powerful metaphor that hits right at home in modern day. Something that a lot of artists,
neurodivergence,
and even just the middle working class are probably feeling right now, as we get to a point in society where the effort that we put in trying to put a smile can be undervalued. If you're not familiar with masking, it's the act of suppressing your true self, your emotions, behavior, or personality, so that way you can meet societal norms and avoid conflicts or misunderstandings. For a lot of people, this is a survival mechanism, and it helps them to get through the grind of the workplace. It can even be seen as a positive aspect when we are more organized, well-mannered, competent. And that's exactly why Kane ends up taking a notice to this change in Gangle when they put on this persona. While it may seem like these more negative aspects of them were erased, in reality, they were just repressed behind the mask. In Gangle's case, we see this going as far as their outlet and their dreams being put on the back burner so that way they can fulfill this role. It makes them start to resent the people around them who aren't putting in as much effort compared to them having to put in extra effort just to meet the same quo. On the other hand, to also give the people around her their credit, Gangle is overexerting and overstressing about something that doesn't have as much of a significance as she likes to believe it does. It's something that we only get to see out of her once she finds people in the group that she trusts, such as Pomni and Zooble, more so than they trust Ragatha. This episode actually hits a little too close for home for me. I was a food service manager about a year ago. Spent 5 whole years working in that industry, and after a year of managing, I couldn't do it anymore. It can be hard when you have to take all that responsibility, whether it's actually implied by a higher up or it's within yourself, having to maintain and juggle the different aspects of becoming a young adult in this current world. There's also this stereotype that when artists don't get to make it big, they go into retail food service. And you can tell a few people at Gooseworks have had to spend a little too much time behind the counter. Hearing them say non-slip shoes, ooh, no, I felt that a little too hard. Even just the little things like the mat on the floor and seeing them do that end of the day cleanup prep, it brought me back. But the hardest part about working a job like this is not just the physical but emotional labor. It's having to be in that space all the time, catering to everybody else's needs, figuring out the balance between professional, unprofessional. This can be why someone like Gangle feels like they have to uphold the rules, even if it is just for a sense of control. And when her co-workers, who in this case are people who she actually loves and cares about supposedly outside of this, tell her, hey, you're a bit off. We prefer you when you are down. We don't really like it when you've got this upper, happier persona. That can be just so devastating. It's enough that we get hints that she would have abstracted had Pomni not have been there to reach out to her. I also like how the way that Pomni did it in this case, it wasn't, oh, I'm gonna fix you the same way I did last time, where we sit down and we talk about our problems in this kumbaya. No. It took her having to offer to reach out to Gangle in a way she could understand. It may have seemed small and stupid that, oh, you had to do it with the job, you had to offer her that, but that reaches some people and the way they process even more than trying to be direct with it. In some cases, being direct can feel a little too intimate. This also gave a chance for Zooble to be the unlikely hero. When it comes to them and their own thing they had going on in episode 2, they seem like they usually could care less. They'd rather figure out themselves in this existence. But they had this shared connection with Gangle and the fact that they were trying to swap and change parts of them when they need to come to terms with themselves. We also see Zooble being essentially the model co-worker during this roleplay session. Whether they did it just so they could get through and have this be another hit and miss that they can not think about, or they were doing it for Gangle's sake, it was really sweet, and it helped in this process of Gangle's work healing. Because in the end, it is up to Gangle if they are going or not going to mask, and they feel more happiness from genuinely learning to be and cope with themselves than they were putting on this persona. It becomes understandable why Gooseworks wanted that final scene to be redone and reshot a few times just to get that sense of release down right. Even though the mask did not break, as we've seen with their happy mask, it shows that it doesn't need to break for them to be the ones to get broken by it. For some people, this episode could be that breakthrough, that reminder that the world and everything they work on is not about this soul-sucking job. In the end, Gangle seems to be more comfortable with themselves with or without the mask, even though they can be on the downer depressive side. We also see that they get back into drawing, and it's very telling that the drawing only has Zooble and Pomni, no Ragatha or Jax to be seen. But at least she is now still keeping to her dreams, and that's what's going to keep her from abstracting. I also like how for this episode, they allowed the other characters to represent different co-worker, bad worker stereotypes. There's Jax, who resents the status quo, lashing out, only doing the bare minimum out of spite. For him, work is this soul-sucking routine, the training videos, the mindless labor, him watching the clock and it never moves, the fear of punishment. We've been there, we've seen him. And the fact that he broke his usual mean streak to just calmly talk to Pomni was so telling. It was also well played that the straight-laced, usually hardworking, helping Ragatha got reduced down to the high co-worker, too inebriated to function, also tending to be that mental whiplash on the poor manager who has to deal with them. Meanwhile, Pomni at the front has to deal with customers oversharing and her having to learn the balance of her and the other people, having to be reminded about Gummy Goo and the fact that him, in the way she saw him that episode, doesn't exist, that he truly is just a simulation in the simulation. Existential horror may not be loud and in your face, but in times like these, we need this kind of horror now more than ever. We need horror that exists in bright, colorful places, that exists in your home, in your backyard. Horror that your friends and your family have all experienced in one way or another. Because it's not Bundy that you should be afraid of, it's Bezos. If you like what you saw, subscribe, like. I plan on doing a lot more with this channel and really bring in the art with cute artistry, so stick along.